All right, welcome back for part 2 of using the type tool in Photoshop. Uh, so far we've covered, using a clipping mask to put a texture inside of a piece of text. We took a look at OpenType fonts as opposed to TrueType fonts and all of the options available to you there. And we took a look at kerning, which is the spacing between two glyphs, two letters. And tracking, which will separate multiple letters. So now we're going to take a look at area type as opposed to point type. Like part 1, we just clicked with the type tool and started typing. Here we're going to create a box of text in this grassy area here in this photo on the label. So I'm going to start with the type tool and click and drag a box with the type tool, about like so. And it automatically starts to fill that box with the lorem ipsum type, that kind of type placeholder that it shows you when you start using the type tool. All right, so I'm going to adjust the settings in the control panel for the text before I really begin typing in earnest. I am going to stay with this font, Helvetica Neue, except now I'm going to change that from bold, right, to condensed bold, right? So I'll kind of smush the characters a bit, make them a little tighter. And I'm going to set the point size to, let's say, about 12 points. And I'm going to set the alignment. In this case, I'm going to right align it because it's coming up against the right-hand side of the label. I'm going to choose right aligned. Just a word to the wise, though. Centered alignment and right alignment are not the most common uses of text. More often than not, you're going to be using left aligned text, but this is just one of those special instances. So this is a bit of an outlier. You're not going to be using centered text a lot or right aligned text very much. All right, and so instead of using that blue color, because the background here is pretty dark, I want it to stand out more. So I'm going to click and drag into the upper left corner to make the text white so it'll stand out a little more. Okay. All right, and again, before I start typing, I'm going to go open up the character panel here, right? It's opening all that. Let me just get it here. And I'm going to set the tracking back to 0. Like the tracking was set to 240. I'm reducing that back to 0 now, right? Again, tracking is the distance between multiple letters in a line of text. And I'm going to bring the vertical scale back up, right, to 150. And again, you probably don't want to use the vertical scaling or horizontal scaling that much. Your printer, if you're using a printer, is not going to like you very much. They don't like it when you mess around with the fonts. But in this case, we're going to risk it because I like the look of that taller font. Okay, so, and by the way, while we're in the character panel, I want you to notice that there are faux settings here. And again, if you want your printer to like you, I would not use those. I would suggest instead you find a font that has those characteristics already designed, like condensed bold. Instead of using a faux bold, like here, the person who created this font actually created different versions that are legitimate, and it's not a fake version of that. So try not to use those here in the character panel if you can help it. Again, your printer will thank you if you don't. All right, so ready to start typing now. So what are we going to find on a milk carton? How about, oops, gotta get out of the character panel before I start typing. All right, so how about grade A? homogenized, pasteurized, R-I-Z-E-D, pasteurized, and how about certified organic? Okay, so looking at this, like the text, I'm hitting the return key to move to the next line, but here, like the line certified organic was too wide for the text box that I created, and so it's hyphenating and moving to, the rest of organic to the next line. That's not a good look, right? Hyphenation is typically a bad thing. We don't want that. We want all of our words to be kind of together. So we're going to take a look at the box itself. Like, let me zoom in here. And it's a little hard to see, but there's a text box all the way around this, and it's got handles on the corners and the sides. I'm going to grab this side handle and extend the box this way until certified organic fits. There we go. All right, that's better. Now, I'm not really happy with the spacing, the way this whole thing is shaping up. So again, I can adjust the size of the box as I need to, or actually I wanted to kind of fill the space that I've got designated with the text box, but the distance between the lines of text aren't far enough apart. So what I'm going to do is select all of that with the type tool, go back to my character panel again, and this time I'm going to concentrate on the setting called leading, right? Set the leading. And here I can push the text closer together, right? By changing the distance. Like normally it's set to auto, but you can adjust this and bring things, sometimes you want them closer together, like that, or sometimes you want them farther apart, like that. And once again, I can go to the icon for the leading setting and just click and drag left and right until I'm happy with that setting. So it looks like, I don't know, I think I'm going to set this for about 19 points and then just adjust the size of the box, about like that. Okay, so play around with it, between the size of the text box and the leading, tracking, etc. Keep playing with it until you get the look that you want. There we go. In fact, I think I missed something here. I'm not happy with that look, so I'm going to go back to the character panel. Yeah, see, I didn't have the vertical scale set to 150 like I wanted to. So I've selected all of it, and now I've bumped it up, and it's got that taller look about it. Cool, and so now maybe I'll have to adjust the leading again. About 19 points is what I need for that. Hit the check mark to commit the edits, and maybe just get the move tool and nudge that where I want it to go. All right, so there's our label. It's an unorthodox label, I know, but we're practicing and having fun. So, all right, so let's say now, remember, I've got this all in a folder, right? All these layers that make up that cow label are in a folder over here. See that? And what I'm going to do is try to place that label on the side of our milk carton over here. And so if I were to just get the move tool and change the auto select from layer to group, the whole group will move, right? Again, if I've got it set to layer and I click on one part of that group, it's just going to move that part. So instead, I'm changing the auto select to group instead of layer. Now I can move the whole thing. All right, so let's try to line it up right on the edge here. Now, you might be tempted to just use free transform to try to adjust this. Remember, Command T is a shortcut for the free transform tool. And if you also remember, you hold down the Command key or Control on a PC, you can distort objects. See that? Now, the problem with this is that I've got a whole group of layers here, and if I go to try to adjust one edge, the other one doesn't want to behave, right? It kind of keeps things isometric, and I need it to really fit on the side here. So I've got a bit of a problem. I'm going to hit Command Z, or in fact, I'm going to hit the Escape key on the keyboard to get out of that free transform without committing the edits. Okay, so once again, let me start by really lining the bottom edge up here just right. And again, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to nudge it perfectly into place. And I want to be able to see the size of the carton, so I'm going to lower the opacity. Well, you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to change this to a smart object. Now, again, a smart object is a container that holds the contents of a layer and basically protects those contents. And so you can basically create a smart object and scale it, resize it, transform it, warp it, etc. And those protected layers inside that smart object will remain unchanged, and you can edit them separately later, right? So I've got all this text on this label. If I were to distort it, you know, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be able to edit it later. But if I change it to a smart object, I will be able to edit it regardless of how much I distort it. All right, so it's pretty useful. And it has more uses than that. In fact, when you bring a file in, like you place a file from, say, Adobe Illustrator that you've created, and you want to place that into a Photoshop document, Illustrator documents like vectors come in automatically as smart objects, so you can edit them in Illustrator separately from the file in Photoshop. So they're handy. All right, so check this out. I'm going to come over here to my Layers panel again, to my Cal label group, and I'm going to right-click it and choose Convert to Smart Object. See that? Now, it basically flattens everything to a single layer, but you're going to notice that that layer now has the Smart Object symbol on it. And that's your cue that you can, your clue that you can edit this, right? Before I go into the smart object to show you that those layers are still intact, it's just behaving like a single layer here in my Layers panel now. So check this out. If I hit Command T now, and I'm going to lower the opacity while I'm at it so I can see through it a bit. There we go. Now remember, if you hold down the Command key or Control on a PC, when you're in a free transform box, you can grab a corner and distort it. See that? I'm going to do the same thing here. Pretty cool, huh? In fact, it looks like I need to make this a little bit taller. And it's handy sometimes to lower the opacity of a layer so you can kind of see what you're doing. And it's always a good idea to zoom in and make sure that everything's behaving itself, that you don't have anything out of place. If you want to be able to see, zoom in. All right, so almost there. All right, now you're going to notice this is going to drive me crazy. Like this blue panel down here at the bottom of my label isn't matching up with the one on the side of the carton. So I'm going to have to do something about that because that'll drive me crazy. It looks like everything else is pretty much in place. Let me check this corner. It always pays off to zoom in and double check. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, so that panel down here is going to drive me crazy. So I want to point something out to you guys. When you're in a transform box like this and you've got a smart object or a single layer, you can click on this switch between free transform and warp modes. See that? And like that warp mode, you can actually access that if you go edit, transform. There are warp options here as well. In addition to things like perspective and distort and skew, rotate, scale, etc., you can warp things. But since I'm in a transform box, I can click on this guy right here and switch to a warp box instead of a transform box. Now, warping allows you to do curvy things, like there are anchor points and handles here, right? So if I grab that handle, you can see I can create a curved look. So this is great for things like bottles, and not as necessarily as handy for flat planes like on this box, but it still has its uses, right? So in free transform, I could not adjust the height of this panel, but in warp, I can do things like I can get this handle and pull it up. See that handle right there? I can basically, as long as I keep it in a straight line with the edge of my label, I can stretch that up a bit. In fact, I can click in the middle here too and adjust things until it look just right. And now my panel lines up the way I want it to. I'm going to bring the opacity back up to 100% now. And when I'm happy with it, I can hit the return key on the keyboard and it'll set that transformation in place. Not bad. Okay, now let's say I want to edit that text on the side here. Well, normally if I had transformed this, I wouldn't be able to edit it. But because I turned it into a smart object first, I can come over here to my layers panel and I can double click that smart object. Oops, I didn't click on the thumbnail. You have to double click on the thumbnail to enter this smart object editing mode. Basically, it opens up your previous layer structure as a separate file that you can deal with individually. So check this out. All my layers that I had before are back. Okay, and let's say something happened at the dairy and we can no longer say that, oops, we can no longer say that it's, oh, now I've done it. I got click happy and added more text. In fact, let me just throw that type layer in the trash over here. Okay, so let's say it's no longer grade A, it's grade B. So I select A and make it grade B. Okay, and maybe it's maybe we're getting generous, and we're going to bump it up to 36 fluid ounces. Right, and I'm not sure how many quarts that'd be, but whatever. Anyway, the idea is that we can edit the text now, or any other layer. All right, now when I'm done editing a smart object, I have to go to the File menu and choose Save. When I save it, it'll take any changes that I've made and apply them. And now I can close this, and when I go back, look, it's updated. It's now grade B, 36 fluid ounces. All right, so pretty cool. a smart object allows me to protect those layers and modify them later, edit them individually later. Okay. Here's another cool thing about smart objects. If I were to apply a filter to a smart object, it becomes a smart filter, right? So on my cow label smart object, I'm going to go and apply a filter gallery setting, and I'm going to use plastic wrap. Okay. This is not going to look good, but I'm just demonstrating. Okay. There, I've applied the plastic wrap filter to it. And if you'll notice over here, I've got smart filters with the ability to hide those smart, like anything that I've applied to it. Not to mention the fact that I can go back if I were to double click that smart filter. Oops, not the mask for it, but just the layer, like filter gallery. I can go back and change it, right? Or change the settings. And it updates, right? So again, if I'm applying a filter to a standard layer, I can't update it later. And I can't hide it. See that? In fact, let's do this. Let's add another filter. Let's do liquefy. Have you guys played around with the liquefy filter? Basically, it allows you to make things gooey and drippy, right? So say this is milk from psychedelic cows, right? So I've made it all droopy and drippy like that. Okay. So again, if you look over here in my in the layers panel, I could hide the liquefy filter, right? Or all of it, right? Because it looks kind of silly. But I just wanted to demonstrate smart object means smart filter. So if you're going to do a lot of filter work and you want the option of updating things later or modifying those filter settings, turn your layer into a smart object first. It doesn't have to be a group. It can be any layer. You can right click it, change it to a smart object, and then you can apply filters to it all day long and go and adjust their settings later. It's a great way to work, non-destructive way of working in Photoshop. Highly recommend that you play around with it. Anyway, there you have it. Using the type tool in Photoshop and a few other goodies along the way. All right, good luck.